Hello, Monsters Abound here. A few weeks ago, Frontier Developments, the people who make Elite Dangerous, invited me to an online event to play their next upcoming game, which is, and I've got to get the name right here, Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin, which is their upcoming Dawn of War-esque type real-time strategy game set in the Age of Sigmar universe. I think it comes out next month. I think it's November 14th? Citation needed. So this was an online event, which meant we RDP'd into their network to play the game on one of their PCs. I don't know if it's virtual or not, to be honest. It's not really important. The important thing to note is that this game wasn't downloaded via Steam or anything like that. I wasn't playing on my PC. It was RDP. It was really good, actually. Very little latency. I didn't really notice. And yeah, it was just a really good event all in all. But it was quite short. We only had about 2 hours with the game. We had an hour where we played by ourselves, and I do like playing with myself. And then we had 2 hours where we were on a 2v2. So two content creators. I was with, I forget the name of the chap, but I think he used to be a Total War content creator? I'm not entirely sure, but he wasn't talkative. Meanwhile, Colonel Damders and Lionheart were having a whale of a time in their room. I got put with the wrong person. I didn't have any friends. Anyway, the point is, so we got 2v2. I believe we were actually playing against some QA people, which kind of confused me because in the lobby area, one of the player slots had my name in it. Well, it had my first initial and my surname, which apparently wasn't me, but it really confused me. And, I mean, I was confused in general, right? Because this is the first time I'd actually played Realm of Ruins. Obviously, since then, we've had the Steam Next Fest demo. So I'm a little bit more au fait with it now. But at that point, it was the first time I'd ever played it. They did have a beta weekend like a month ago, I think. But of course, that was the weekend I was away, so I didn't get to try it. Rubbish. So dropped into a game with very little time to try and soak up everything. It's always quite stressful, actually. I remember being at the Total War Three Kingdoms event and just having, like, I think it was probably around 2 hours to play, and just, maybe even shorter, and just desperately trying to get everything in there and desperately trying to learn everything and look at all the tooltips. And it's a lot of stuff to take in, quite stressful, but very enjoyable all the same. So, of course, this game is set in the Age of Sigmar, and that is a game system that Games Workshop brought up, I want to say recently, but it's not. It's quite old by now, and it has sort of matured a little bit. I realised that when it first came out, the lore was questionable, shall we say. But in fairness, if you look back at the old Warhammer and old Warhammer 40,000 lore, you'd probably think the same thing. These game systems have had a lot of time to sort of cook in their own juices, to mature. They've had a lot more stuff written about them. Age of Sigmar came in, new kid on the block. He was wearing his baseball hat backwards. Everyone hated him. But I think it's starting to get there, isn't it? Age of Sigmar, of course, is a bit more high fantasy than Warhammer was. I mean, Warhammer was pretty high, but this Age of Sigmar is, holy shit, what are you smoking level of high. So the Age of Sigmar universe is set up to, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong here, but the different realms of magic, effectively. Think of planes, right, in other sort of game systems. Planes based on the different winds of magic colours. So you have is it Azir, which is the heavens, that's where Sigmar lives, and then you've got Shyish, which is dark magic, undeath magic, whatever that one is. Anyway, so that is obviously where Nagash lives, and then this game is, I believe, is set in Gur, which is the sort of amber magic. We know amber magic's great because Amber Spear is the best spell in the game. That's a given. I don't think it's a spell in this game, which obviously we are going to have to mark it down for. But, you know, it might be good even though it doesn't have Amber Spear in it. I actually don't know if Amber Spear is a thing in Age of Sigmar. Huh. Oh well. So the different realms obviously veer towards different characteristics of the magic. Gur being amber, beasts, wild. It's all very bestial. It's where a lot of the orcs live because that's, you know, their kind of mood. I think Gork and Mork actual characters. I mean, I know they were, but are they still characters or did they kind of bugger off? I don't know. I don't really know enough about Age of Sigmar lore. It's not necessarily my primary game system. Anyway, the point is that you travel between the realms using realm gates, and these are sort of hot spots of fighting between the various different factions that live in the Age of Sigmar universe. So, what is the game like? Well, the game is effectively a Dawn of War type RTS, which means you have sort of a primary building. Wait, to be honest, the Dawn of War game sort of changed. I'm assuming this is more sort of Dawn of War 2-esque, potentially. So you start off with like a portal, that's your home building. You can recruit units from that and then upgrade them. You then move your units out to capture objectives. And there's two different types of objectives. There's like little circle ones. I'm sure there's like terminology for this, but there's circle objectives. These ones provide you with resources. So your units capture them, and then they provide you with the different resources, which is command and orange command, potentially. I don't know what it's called, like Realmstone or something. Who knows? The point is there's blue and orange. You get blue by default. You can upgrade an objective to give you orange resource. The blue resource is mostly used for recruiting units. Orange one is sort of a bit more advanced. It's like an advanced blue, you know? Good. Okay, I'm glad everyone's still with me here. So capture the round objectives to get more resources. That allows you to recruit more units, to upgrade units, and to upgrade your base, so it allows you to then access higher tier units. You then also have diamond objectives, and these are the way that you win a specific map. Because by capturing these, you decrease your enemy's score. You both start off with 750 points. I'm not sure if that's like a default, whether that can be increased or decreased. But the important thing is that as you capture those objectives, those diamond objectives, it will slowly decrease the enemy's score. Once that score reaches 0, you've effectively won. The other way you can decrease an enemy's score is by attacking their home. However, their home is pretty heavily defended and will fight back, and it will do a lot of damage. So you're probably not going to be able to sustain an attack on it, but you can, you know, nibble away at his points by attacking his little home with your units if you manage to overwhelm him to that degree. However, that feels more like a tactic to shorten a game, i.e. if you've managed to dominate someone so utterly that you're at their base and captured everything, you don't have to just wait for the points to decrease. You can hit their base and win the map a little bit more quickly. Now, while there is a campaign, which we saw in the Steam Next Fest demo, I've got a few videos on that. There were 3 missions you could play in the demo, and I do quite like the campaign. You are playing as the Stormcast Eternals, which is probably the most boring faction because they're basically Age of Sigmar Space Marines. They do have a little bit more personality though, so that's nice. But overall, of the 4 factions available, they probably are the most boring. But they are also probably the most newbie friendly. However, even then, the cinematics we've been seeing at the start and end of each mission seem really good. I quite like the characters, so I think the campaign could genuinely have a really good storyline, and the missions seem quite fun. However, I would say the game does seem to be mostly built around multiplayer. And the reason I say this is because while we do have a campaign, and we do have a sort of skirmish campaign where you pick your faction and then move from node to node, those maps are effectively multiplayer maps, right? You're fighting a multiplayer map against the AI. That's just how it works. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would say that I'm not really a multiplayer kind of guy. I'm more a guy that likes playing with himself. I am probably not the target market for the multiplayer in this game. It's a little bit fast, a little bit furious, and I'm going to be honest, I don't like playing with other people for the most part, especially just randoms. I don't mind playing with friends, but playing with randoms is not really the kind of thing I enjoy doing, to be honest. I find it quite stressful. And it depends if playing on a mirror map against the AI will actually be satisfying. I think that is my question. Is that going to be a satisfying experience? I can't answer that at the moment. As I say, I've not really had enough time with the game. What I will say about the game is that it works really well. It feels really polished. The combat feels really, really good. You have several different types of units, but for the most part, they boil down to melee units and ranged units. Melee units, as the name suggests, engage in melee. Now, when two units engage in melee, you can't just pull them out. For example, you couldn't kite with a ranged unit by engaging an enemy unit and then pulling them away and then shooting them a little bit and then running away, because once you're engaged in combat, you're engaged. You cannot pull out of that. There is one way to get out of that, and that is either, well, there's two ways actually. Three. There's three ways to get out of that. One, you kill the enemy. Two, you get killed. Three, you retreat. Retreating effectively runs your units all the way home, probably crying, and allows you to heal up. Now, retreating does cost command, that's the blue resource, and it can only be done on a cooldown, so you do have to be careful about utilising it. It does mean the unit gets a boost of speed and makes them unstoppable. It doesn't make them invulnerable, which means if they can be picked off on the way home, they will be dead. However, it is a way to save your units from death, which then means you save resources, and you can spend more resources on upgrades and potentially storing it for higher tier units. With that said, even when your unit runs home, it will take a little while to heal up. So it does mean that that unit is out of the battle for a little while. The number of units you can have in any one particular battle are fairly limited. So you are going to have to make careful choices about retreating your units, healing them up, engaging in particular locations. You want sort of battles that are going to be advantageous, but even if you're engaged in an advantageous battle, it doesn't mean you can't be flanked. So if you engage in a battle and you think, yeah, this is going well, if all of your melee units are now engaged and suddenly more enemy units appear from the flanks, well, you're going to be in trouble. So it does feel like there is a lot of strategy in this game, which is really, really nice. It is quite fast, it is quite furious, there's a lot of micro required, and I'm going to be honest, I am old and my back hurts. I don't think I've got the agility to necessarily play multiplayer, but that's fine because, to be honest, I wouldn't enjoy it anyway. However, I do think the little node type campaign map, and of course the campaign itself, do look quite fun. So there are 4 factions, and in fact we got to see the new 4th faction. I say new 4th faction because I have heard from people that the 4th faction was already spoiled. So as part of this event we got to see the 4th faction. So there's been 3 factions announced, there were 4 factions in the game, and the 4th faction is Tzeentch. So Tzeentch is going to join the lineup with the Stormcast Eternals, the Cruel Boys, who are orcs or Uruks, as they like to be called these days in Age of Sigmar, and also the Nighthaunts, who are basically ghosts. I didn't get to play as the Nighthaunts, but I did get to play as the other 3 factions. I do quite like the Stormcast Eternals. They're quite a nice tanky faction. They're quite easy to play. The Aurochs seem to be based more around sort of ambushes and stuff, which is a little bit more micro intensive. And Tzeentch, despite the fact that they sort of aim towards more of a ranged battle play, I think, they actually seem quite tanky, and I do like setting people on fire. So you do get the flamers and the pink horrors, and when the pink horrors die they do turn into blue horrors, which is nice to see. So the Tzeentch faction has things like Marauders, it has Zangor, which I think we first saw in the Silver Tower Warhammer Quest game, I think. Could be wrong on that, but I'm fairly sure that was the first time. And all of the guys look great. Obviously you get a Lord of Change as well, higher tier units come in, a Lord of Change is there. They all look great. All of the units have different abilities as well. So the units like the Stormcast Eternals have more sort of armor, heals, that kind of thing. The Aurochs are more sort of ambush, stealth, one shots, trying to aim at that kind of thing. And the Tzeentch faction tends to have a lot of AoE, a lot of fire abilities, as you kind of expect. So the factions sort of play towards the faction's strength and that kind of thing. And the one thing I will say about Age of Sigmar is that all of the armies have an incredibly strong theme about them. I would have really liked to have seen the new Night Goblins. What are they called? The Moon, whatever the fuck those guys are. Anyway, they seem genuinely pretty cool. Those guys, and also the Bone Mech boys. I went to Warhammer World and they had a diorama with and I can't remember what they're called, but the Bone Boy, right? The undead army that's basically just bone people. those guys, they seem pretty cool. I'd like to see them. So ideally, obviously this game will do well and we'll see lots of DLC for it. The maps look really, really good, but even in the short time I had the game, they did come across a little bit samey. It was a lot of sort of browns and greys and sort of muted greens and that kind of thing, with some white towers thrown in. And while that's not bad, the maps did look really, really nice. I do think fighting on the same sort of style of map might get a little bit boring. I think setting it in one particular realm may not have been the best option, because that's going to really limit what kind of palette you've got your game on. And I think changes of biome are a big thing in games overall. I think having different biomes does give that sort of, fresh feeling to a battle. As I say, we did play a 2v2 against QA people, and I think they were pulling their punches, to be honest. I think they were pulling their punches quite a bit. And I think this because the first, we played about 3 battles, I think, and the first one we won, we did quite well. No, I think the first one we lost. The first one we lost, the second one we won. The third one, I was getting into it. I was playing as Oryx, the Cruel Boys, and I was getting into it. I felt like, yeah, we've kind of got this. This map had 3 bridges where each of the diamond objectives was on a bridge, and I was sort of like pushing a little bit, holding it, and then retreating to save my units, and then going forward again. I was feeling like, yeah, okay, I'm getting this. And we got them down to about, I want to say, below 100 points of their. So they started off with 750, they were below 100, right? I thought, this is in the bag, baby. We got this. I'm getting this. And then they fucking annihilated us. Like, they just crushed us. With below 100 points, they just came back and fucking annihilated us. And that was the last battle we played, and I genuinely think they looked at the time, thought, okay, it's time to it's time to serve them up their arses on a platter. And they did. Although, in fairness, being the fact that they've probably played this game a lot, they kind of know what matchup works against what. And I think that is probably what this game is going to be a lot of. It's seeing that the enemy has this unit and knowing that your faction is capable of recruiting this unit, which will be able to defeat that unit. I think it's a lot of that kind of thing. Or knowing that with this ability, I can defeat them with this unit. I think it's a lot of matching, that kind of thing. And I think if you've been playing as QA, then obviously you've played it a lot and you're fully aware of what units can do what. Whereas obviously coming in as someone who played this game for an hour and a half at that point, I didn't have a clue. Despite that, it was still a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to the release next month, because I would like to play through the campaign. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I would like to try the skirmish campaign as well, which could be interesting. I don't know. I guess it depends how satisfying each of those AI stomps are effectively. There is an army painter, which is really nice to see, so you can just change the look of your faction, which is something I really wish that Total War had. And you can also get kind of experience points, which then unlock different things. I think it's mostly heroes and stuff, but maybe it's aesthetic-y things as well. I'm not entirely sure on that. Again, I was jumping around a lot here just to try and soak everything in, and I wasn't entirely sure where I was supposed to be going. So, lots of stuff to look forward to, I think. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.